6 months after a devastating betrayal, Emily Vance has rebuilt her empire stronger than ever. But shadows from the past are closing in. Victor Kane, her ex-husband, consumed by greed and old wounds, teams up with Scarlett Reed, a cunning woman with a history of manipulation. Together, they hatch a high-stakes plan to hack into Emily's company, exposing fabricated evidence that could destroy everything she has built. As the scheme unfolds, Emily receives the first warning signs: subtle glitches, mysterious messages, and threats disguised as chance encounters. But Emily is not the same woman she was months ago. With her brother Marcus and a sharp legal team by her side, she turns the tables, uncovering hidden clues about Scarlett's past deceit. The tension escalates in a dangerous game of cat and mouse. Victor grapples with his conscience, Scarlett's ruthlessness escalates, and the FBI closes in, setting a trap that will either save Emily or topple her empire forever. In a dramatic twist, betrayal meets justice, secrets are exposed, and Emily seizes control with unflinching precision. This is the story of resilience and revenge, where every choice carries risk and every truth has its price. Emily's rise, Victor's internal struggle, and Scarlett's downfall collide in a storm of suspense, leaving the question: can power and forgiveness truly coexist, or will the past always cast a shadow over the present? Emily Vance stood at the edge of the rooftop terrace of Ascent Ventures headquarters, watching the city shift from the warmth of late afternoon to the shimmering glow of approaching night. The air carried the faint hum of distant traffic, a reminder that the world continued to move, no matter how turbulent a single life became. Half a year had passed since the storm of betrayal and heartbreak that shattered her marriage, her trust, and nearly her career. Yet those same fractures had become the foundation of her rise. She had taken everything broken and reforged it into something sharper and more substantial. Ascent Ventures, once a fragile idea, had grown into a beacon for women who had been silenced, dismissed, or overlooked by the business world. Emily had not planned for power. She had planned for survival, but power had come anyway, wrapped in responsibility and sharpened by expectation. Her board trusted her. Her team admired her. The global initiative she launched sparked hope for women who had been marginalized in their industries. And still, in the quiet moments, she felt the echo of the past tapping gently at the back of her mind. She brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear and exhaled, trying to savor the peaceful evening before her next meeting. That was when her phone buzzed with a single new email. She glanced at it with casual disinterest, expecting a report, a reminder, or perhaps a late request from her communications team. Instead, she froze. The message contained only 7 words. "You think you have won, we return." There were no names, no sender, no attachments, no signature. Just a whisper from the shadows she thought she had closed the door on. Her first instinct was to laugh at the absurd melodrama of it all. Her second instinct was to fight the sudden tremor beneath her ribs. Because she knew there were only 2 people who would send something like that. 2 people who refused to remain buried in her past. Victor Kane and Scarlett Reed. For a moment, Emily stared at the screen as the city lights brightened below her. Then she locked her phone and placed it on the cold metal railing. She had rebuilt her life on transparency, truth, and the strength to face what once terrified her. This message was nothing more than the return of ghosts. Ghosts only had power if she gave it to them. Still, the air around her felt heavier, as if the coming night carried a scent of unfinished business. She leaned forward and allowed her thoughts to drift. Victor Kane, charm polished into ambition, ambition sharpened into greed. A man who once seemed to love her deeply, but loved power more. She remembered the early days with him, before the cracks appeared, before Scarlett slithered into the picture, before betrayal became an everyday language. And yet, beneath all of that, she remembered a man who once held her hand with sincerity. She had spent months in therapy unraveling the contradictions of that memory. Scarlett Reed lived like a reflection of Victor's ambition. Raised in a world that gave her nothing, she learned early how to take what she wanted. Her hunger for status was relentless. Her ability to manipulate perception was almost an art form. Emily could hate what Scarlett had done, but part of her understood that desperation could carve people into strange shapes. Emily straightened her posture and refocused her mind on the present. She refused to let their shadows stretch across the future she was building. Inside the building, her team moved through evening routines. A few lights remained on. A handful of employees finished reports or polished proposals. Even from the rooftop, Emily could sense the quiet pulse of hope inside the walls. These people relied on her. They believed in the mission of Ascent Ventures. They believed in the woman who rose from the ashes to lead them. She would not betray that belief by letting an anonymous message shake her resolve. She turned away from the skyline and began walking toward the stairwell. Her heels clicked softly against the concrete. Each step steadied her thoughts. As she walked, she reminded herself of the facts. Her security team had strengthened every digital wall of the company. Marcus had insisted on layers of protection that bordered on excessive. Sophia Grant had triple-checked every legal protocol. She had prepared for this. She had grown because of this. Still, she knew that Victor and Scarlett were never simple adversaries. They were cunning, they were reckless, and worst of all, they were desperate. Desperation made people dangerous. She had seen that firsthand. She reached the door and paused her hand, hovering just above the metal handle. A strange feeling washed over her, both familiar and unnerving. It felt like the universe holding its breath, as if she stood at the beginning of a story she thought had ended, but had only paused. Past and present were about to collide again. She opened the door and stepped into the cool stairwell. The echoes of her footsteps followed her downward. When she reached her office floor, she walked toward the glass corridor that connected the executive suites. Her reflection appeared briefly in the window. Strong, composed, but there was something else in her eyes. A spark of anticipation, a whisper of challenge. She hated that some part of her still felt that way. She wanted peace. She wanted closure. But perhaps part of her needed the confrontation, needed to prove to herself that Victor Kane no longer had power over her story. When she entered her office, she sat at her desk and powered up her laptop. Instead of panic, she felt the familiar clarity that came whenever she faced an approaching storm. She typed a message to Marcus asking him to trace the email. She added a second message to Sophia requesting an early morning check of all legal vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Then she leaned back in her chair and allowed herself a slow, steady breath. She was not the same woman Victor betrayed, and she was not the naive heart Scarlett underestimated. She was stronger now, sharper, smarter, and far more prepared. Yet the message lingered like a distant thunder, warning her that the storm had begun gathering long before she noticed the clouds. Emily closed her eyes only for a heartbeat. When she opened them, she saw her future clearly laid out before her. Success always carried a price, power always attracted danger, and the past always returned when least expected. But she would face it. All of it. This time, the story belonged to her. Victor Kane sat on the edge of a worn sofa in the cramped apartment he now called home. The place smelled faintly of dust and detergent, a lingering reminder that it had been prepared not for his comfort, but for his survival. The apartment belonged to his mother, Elaine, who had taken him in with a mix of reluctance and maternal obligation. The wallpaper peeled in several corners, and the refrigerator hummed with an uneven rattle that echoed through the small space. It was a far cry from the penthouse he once occupied, where marble floors gleamed and city lights framed every window. Now the only view he had was a parking lot scattered with aging cars, and a streetlight that flickered every few minutes. He stared at the blank television screen in front of him, his mind drifting through memories he hated, yet could not silence. The wealth he once held had been real. The admiration was mostly manufactured. The love he lost with Emily had been genuine, at least in the beginning, before ambition curled itself around his heart like a parasite. He told himself that he deserved more, that he was destined for greatness, that he needed power to escape the mediocrity he feared. That yearning had followed him since childhood. He remembered nights in a cold bedroom, listening to his parents argue about money. He remembered his father finally leaving, disappearing into a future that did not include either of them. Victor carried that abandonment like a silent scar that shaped every decision he made. His phone buzzed, and he flinched. The screen displayed the name he knew would eventually return: Scarlett Reed. He hesitated, then answered. Scarlett spoke before he could breathe. "We have a chance. I found something." Her voice was sharper than he remembered, filled with urgency and that restless hunger she had always carried. Scarlett had grown up with even less than he had. Poverty shaped her with unforgiving hands. She learned early that beauty could be a weapon and ambition a lifeline. Victor understood her well because they came from the same kind of scarcity, but she lacked the hesitation he sometimes felt. Where he paused, she acted. Where he doubted, she struck. Victor rubbed his temple. "Scarlett, what is this about, Anne?" She replied with impatient confidence. "Emily, her company. I found files that suggest fraud in her audit reports. We can use them. We can turn everything around." A pulse of anxiety tightened his chest. He had not spoken Emily's name aloud in months. Each time he thought of her, he felt a mix of guilt, frustration, longing, and shame. He wanted to hate her for succeeding without him, but he couldn't. The truth was, she deserved her success. She had always deserved better than he gave her. Victor swallowed. "How did you find these files?" Scarlett released a soft laugh. "You forget what I am capable of. I have connections. People owe me favors. Someone anonymously delivered these documents to me. They show irregularities in Ascent Ventures' financial audits. If we leak them, the fallout will be massive." He felt a cold knot settle in his stomach. Something about this felt wrong, too convenient, too sudden. And yet the lure of redemption tugged at him. He imagined reclaiming his reputation, regaining his influence, proving he was not the failure everyone thought he had become. He imagined rising again as he watched Emily's empire tremble. Scarlett continued. "Meet me tonight. We need to plan. I am serious, Victor. This is our chance." He ended the call without responding. Silence filled the apartment again, but this time it vibrated with tension. He leaned back against the sofa and closed his eyes. Emily's face appeared in his mind, her gentle smile, her steady resilience, the way she once believed in him without hesitation. He wondered when exactly he had stopped deserving her faith. He asked when his fear of being nothing had turned him into someone she could not trust. He replayed the last moment he saw her, her eyes filled not with rage but with disappointment. That expression haunted him more than any accusation could. Yet ambition whispered to him now. If there was proof of wrongdoing at Ascent Ventures, he could use it. He could negotiate. He could leverage it for a comeback. He could finally take control. But beneath that ambition, another truth fluttered like a dying flame. He had loved her. He had ruined everything. And every step he took toward revenge felt like stepping deeper into a shadow he no longer wanted to belong to. Still, he found himself standing. Still, he found himself grabbing his jacket. Still, he found himself leaving the apartment. The night air was cold as he walked toward Scarlett's location, a dim bar near the warehouse district. When he entered, Scarlett was already seated in a corner booth. She wore a confident smile, though her clothes were far simpler than her usual style. Her fall from luxury had been as steep as his, yet she held herself like someone who refused to be defeated. Victor sat across from her. "Please show me what you have." She slid a folder across the table. Inside, he found printed spreadsheets, financial breakdowns, and emails that suggested Emily had bribed external auditors. His stomach twisted. The documents appeared genuine, but something about them seemed too well aligned, too perfect. Scarlett leaned in close. "This is enough to start an investigation, enough to make her company collapse, enough for us to rise again." He looked up at Scarlett. For the first time, he saw the desperation hidden beneath her confident smile. She needed this just as much as he did. They were two broken people, chasing the illusion of victory as if it could repair the wounds beneath. Victor closed the folder. "We cannot rush. We need a plan." Scarlett nodded. "I already have an idea. We leak these to the right journalist. Then we hit her systems. A breach will make everything look authentic. You know her better than anyone. You know her weaknesses." Victor felt the weight of those words. Yes, he knew her. He knew her strength, her intellect, her instincts. He knew she was not careless enough to leave such traces. Doubt gnawed at him again, but Scarlett's intensity pushed the doubt aside. She tapped the folder. "This is our path back. Emily will not expect us. She believes she has moved on. Let us remind her that the past is not dead." Her words stirred something dark and familiar within him. The part of him that feared insignificance, the part that believed redemption required victory over the person he once betrayed. Victor nodded slowly. He felt the decision closing around him like a cage he had willingly walked into. "All right," he said. "Let us begin." Scarlett smiled with satisfaction. Then she pulled out a laptop and opened a secure program filled with unfamiliar symbols and lines of code. Victor watched as she prepared to infiltrate Ascent Ventures' digital walls. She typed with confidence and precision, her focus sharp and unwavering. Numbers and pathways flashed across the screen. Victor felt the old thrill of risk pulse through him, but beneath it all, a hollow ache formed in his chest. He whispered inside his mind a truth he would never admit aloud. Emily deserved honesty. Emily deserved peace. Emily deserved better than this. Yet he said nothing. Scarlett pressed a final key and leaned back triumphantly. "We are in." Victor felt the world tilt. There was no turning back now. Flashbacks stirred at the edge of his mind. Moments of tenderness with Emily. Moments when he believed he could become a different man. Moments swallowed by his fear of mediocrity. He blinked and pushed the memory away. Ambition demanded sacrifice. Regret had no place tonight. He looked at Scarlett and, for an instant, wondered if she too carried the ghosts of choices that shaped her. But she only smiled at him, confident and ruthless. Tomorrow, the world will hear about Emily Vance. And the past would claw its way back into her life with teeth sharpened by betrayal. Victor felt the weight of that truth as he stood from the booth. The night outside smelled of rain and danger. He wondered distantly whether he would one day regret this moment more than all the others. But he walked into the darkness anyway. Emily Vance sat in the gentle glow of her office as dawn crept slowly across the horizon. The lights of the city faded into pale blue morning, while the rooftop terrace above her welcomed the rising sun. She had barely slept after receiving the anonymous email. A tension she thought she had shed long ago returned like a quiet ache in her chest. She attempted to bury it beneath work reports and investment proposals, but her mind kept circling the same thought. Victor and Scarlett. She had prepared for them. She had outgrown them. Yet the past had a way of resurfacing when least expected. Her phone vibrated with a sharp insistence. She reached for it and found a message from her brother Marcus. His text was short and urgent. "We need to talk, now." Before she could respond, the glass door to her office swung open and Marcus entered with brisk purpose. He wore his usual dark jacket with a tablet clutched in one hand. His expression was tense but not panicked, indicating that the situation was serious yet still within his control. Emily stood. "Tell me." Marcus set the tablet on her desk and tapped the screen. "Overnight, I detected multiple attempts to breach our internal systems. The intruder tried to access auditing files and financial documents. All attempts were blocked, but Ubautwa was able to trace the signatures." He hesitated, as if measuring his words. "Emily, the pattern matches Victor." The name struck her like a soft blow to the ribs. Not enough to break her, but enough to bruise. She inhaled slowly, grounding herself in the reality before her. Emily leaned over the tablet, scanning the logs. Victor consistently underestimated the details. These traces were familiar. An unpolished but persistent method he used years ago when he toyed with digital shortcuts. It was sloppy yet dangerous. She straightened. Could he really be trying to dismantle everything again? Marcus crossed his arms. Scarlett Reed may be involved. If they are working together, we need to prepare for a coordinated attack. They could be building a narrative. False data, leaked reports, anything to undermine the integrity of Ascent Ventures. Emily allowed a moment for frustration to swell, then fade into clarity. She had rebuilt her life on the foundation of transparency. She would not lose herself to fear now. She gestured toward the chair. "Sit. We need to plan." Before Marcus could respond, her office phone rang. She picked it up. Sophia Grant, speaking through the speaker, confirmed in her calm, precise tone that she was already aware of suspicious activity. Sophia said, "I reviewed the attempted breach Marcus detected. If Victor and Scarlett proceed with any false accusations, we have several legal strategies ready. Under federal cybersecurity law, unauthorized access to your systems can result in charges that include significant prison time. If they leak falsified documents, it becomes fraud on top of intrusion. We can pursue federal jurisdiction." Emily felt a small wave of relief. Sophia always provided stability in uncertainty. "Please send me the complete legal outline," she said, "and prepare a statement in case the situation becomes public." Sophia replied immediately, "Already drafting it. Stay cautious. If they escalate, we respond methodically, not emotionally." The call ended, and Marcus sank into the chair across from her. Emily pressed her hands against her desk. "Thank you, Marcus. We would not have caught this without you." He lifted an eyebrow. "I am just doing my job. But I need you to be careful. Victor might be reckless, but Scarlett is unpredictable. She will drag him into anything if she thinks it gives her an advantage." Emily nodded, though her thoughts drifted to Scarlett's cold smirk from the last time they met. Scarlett had always observed Emily with a strange blend of resentment and fascination. The two women had been opposites in almost every way. Scarlett lacked stability growing up, which created a hunger for power and recognition. Emily had never resented her for that. She had only resented the betrayal. Emily exhaled. "I want everything double-checked, our audits, our contracts, any vulnerability that can be twisted." "Already done," Marcus replied, "but there is one more thing." He hesitated. "Someone inside might have helped them. The access attempts were too targeted. Someone familiar with our structure could have given them a blueprint." The idea unsettled her more than the attempted hack itself. Trust was the backbone of Ascent Ventures. If someone inside had been compromised, it was not just a breach of security, but a fracture in loyalty. Before she could respond, her assistant Beatrice knocked on the door. "Emily, a car is waiting to take you to the Empower Her conference. They are expecting you at 9. Emily checked the time. She had almost forgotten. The Empower Her conference was one of the largest gatherings supporting women in finance and entrepreneurship. Her keynote was meant to highlight resilience and transparency in leadership. The irony stung. She was about to speak on empowerment, but her past was attempting to undermine her present. She grabbed her notebook and straightened her jacket. Marcus walked with her toward the elevator. Beatrice asked quietly, "Should I prepare any crisis statements?" "Not yet," Emily answered. "If we respond too early, we feed their narrative. Let us wait for Sophia's full assessment." Beatrice nodded. Understood. The elevator carried Emily and Marcus downward in a quiet metallic hum. Halfway down, Marcus turned to her. "Are you all right?" Emily hesitated. "I am angry that they continue to try to control the narrative of my life. But I am not afraid. Not anymore." Marcus smiled slightly. "Good, because this is just the beginning." The doors opened and Emily stepped out into the lobby. A car waited outside. Cameras from local reporters flashed as she approached. The story of her company's meteoric rise had made her a public figure, and she was used to attention. But today, the questions felt sharper than usual. A reporter angled a microphone toward her. "Emily, do you fear the past catching up with you?" Emily paused. A dozen responses flickered through her mind, but she chose calm confidence. "The past does not scare me. It taught me, and it made me stronger." She offered a composed smile and entered the car. As it pulled away, she looked out the window at the busy morning streets. She knew the conference would be filled with energy, hope, and conversation about progress. She also knew that somewhere Victor and Scarlett were plotting quietly, threading strings into a trap designed to snap beneath her feet. But she would face every twist with clarity. She arrived backstage at the conference hall and prepared for her keynote. Her assistant helped attach her microphone, while event staff made the necessary adjustments. The audience murmured with excitement beyond the curtain. Emily stepped onto the stage and was met with warm applause. She began speaking about resilience, transparency, and the importance of women supporting one another. Her voice carried steady and strong, but somewhere in the back of her mind, the anonymous email lingered like a shadow. After the keynote, she answered questions from attendees. Then a journalist approached with a thin smile. "Emily, what would you say to those who claim your success came too easily? Are you worried someone might challenge it?" Emily met the question with calm irony. "If anyone challenges my success, they should know I would not be here without overcoming challenges far greater." The audience laughed softly. The journalist lowered his microphone, unsure how to respond. Emily continued through the sessions, interacting with founders, investors, and activists. The conference filled her with renewed motivation, yet beneath the inspiration, a quiet unrest pulsed steadily. As the event concluded, she returned to her car. Marcus had sent another message, more activity. "We need to review it tonight." Emily leaned back in her seat, letting the weight of the day settle in. The threat was real. The enemies were familiar. The stakes were higher than ever. But she was ready. She had allies she trusted. She had the strength she earned. And if Victor and Scarlett wanted a war, they would learn that Emily Vance did not break easily. The past had returned, but this time she would face it without fear. Victor Kane walked through the dim hallway of the abandoned warehouse Scarlett had chosen as their temporary operations base. The floorboards creaked beneath his steps, and the air smelled faintly of rust and damp wood. It reminded him of a place he had once taken refuge in as a child, during winter storms, when the house he shared with his mother barely retained heat. Those nights, he had huddled under a thin blanket, imagining a life where he never had to fear scarcity again. That dream followed him like a shadow, and every mistake he made grew from it. Scarlett sat at a makeshift desk illuminated by a single industrial lamp. She was scrolling through lines of code on her laptop, fingers tapping rapidly across the keyboard. Her expression was sharp with determination and something more volatile. She thrived in situations that demanded boldness, even recklessness. It was one of the reasons Victor both admired and feared her. He approached the desk. "What have you found?" Scarlett glanced up with a smirk. "Proof, or at least what appears to be." She spun the laptop toward him. "These files appear to show that Emily paid off external auditors to inflate the valuation of Ascent Ventures during its initial funding round. They are clean, thorough, precisely the kind of thing that would destroy her if the public believed it." Victor scanned the screen and felt a wave of uncertainty wash over him. The documents had the appearance of legitimacy. Email chains, payment trails, digital signatures. But something about them felt artificially precise. Too symmetrical, too polished. Almost as if someone had created them with the explicit purpose of fueling a scandal. He leaned back slightly. "Who gave you these?" Scarlett shrugged. "Someone anonymous. Someone who said they wanted justice. Someone who knows what Emily has done in the shadows." Victor frowned. Emily has never been careless. She would not risk her reputation with anything like this. Even when we were married, she kept every detail precise. Every decision is carefully measured. Scarlett's expression tightened with annoyance. "You always defend her, even now, even after she left you with nothing." Victor felt a flicker of defensiveness rise in his chest. "I am not defending her. I am recognizing reality. If we move forward with false evidence, we risk everything. You and I both know how dangerous the truth can become when manipulated." Scarlett stood abruptly and stepped closer to him, her voice lowered to a whisper, sharp and deliberate. "Emily walked away from you. She humiliated you. She built an empire on top of the rubble she left behind, and the world praises her for it. We are not manipulating the truth. We are correcting it." Victor stared at her. He wanted to believe that. He tried to think that bringing Emily down would bring him peace, but something inside him resisted that narrative. He remembered Emily sitting at their kitchen table late into the night, reviewing contracts for her first major project. He remembered her carefully weighing every ethical concern before making decisions. She had flaws, but deliberate fraud was not one of them. Still, the fire of ambition burned behind Scarlett's eyes, and he felt himself drawn into it. He had been powerless for months. For someone who lived in fear of insignificance, the promise of control was intoxicating. Scarlett returned to her laptop. "While you hesitate, I am already 10 steps ahead. I accessed the Ascent Ventures network last night. Their firewall is strong, but not impenetrable. I retrieved backups of their archived files. The inconsistencies in their internal audits will support the narrative we are building." Victor stiffened. "You hacked her already?" "Yes," Scarlett answered without remorse. "And I will do it again." For a long moment, Victor said nothing. He felt like a man standing at the edge of a cliff with the wind urging him to jump. He remembered Emily's face when she learned about his affairs. A quiet heartbreak, stronger than any scream. She had saved her fury for later. She had saved her dignity for herself. He had ruined everything, and she had walked away. That memory haunted him because it revealed who she truly was, someone who refused to be diminished. Scarlett snapped him from his thoughts. "We will release the documents tonight." Victor blinked. "Tonight?" "Yes, the longer we wait, the more risk we take. With the financial summit coming up, her company is in the spotlight, a perfect moment for chaos." Chaos. The word scraped against the inside of his mind. Scarlett pointed at a file. "I will leak these documents to the journalist at the Tribune. He has been hungry for a major corporate scandal. Once he publishes the story, investors will panic. Stock activity will collapse. Then we release the secondary leak, a digital breach that shows the same forged data traced back to Ascent servers. It will push the narrative that Emily tried to hide her crimes." Victor exhaled slowly. "You already planned this without me." "I planned this for both of us," Scarlett answered. "But I need your help for the final step." He looked at her warily. "What step?" "You know Emily better than anyone," Scarlett said. "You know her patterns, her responses, her vulnerabilities. I want you to anticipate her reaction so we can stay ahead of her." Victor swallowed. A knot tightened in his throat. The thought of using intimate knowledge of Emily against her felt like crossing a boundary he once promised himself he would never cross. But the promise had been made in a different life, when he believed he could be the man she thought he was. Scarlett returned to her chair and continued typing. Her focus was razor sharp. She lived for moments like this. The adrenaline, the precision, the thrill of outmaneuvering opponents. Victor lowered himself into a nearby chair and closed his eyes. Memories flickered in disjointed fragments. Emily is laughing while cooking. Emily was crying quietly after one of his betrayals. Emily was sitting in the courtroom during their divorce, her posture straight, but her eyes exhausted. He remembered the way she walked out afterward, her back unbroken despite everything. A part of him wished he could walk back to that moment and choose differently. But life rarely offered rewinds. Scarlett's voice cut through his thoughts. "I need you to decide, Victor. Are you with me or not?" He opened his eyes and stared at her. Scarlett had been loyal to him in her own twisted way. She stood by him when he fell. But Emily had once loved him purely and without agenda. The contrast tore at him. Yet ambition whispered again. "This is your chance to rebuild, to rise, to matter." He stood slowly. His voice came out quiet but steady. "I am with you." Scarlett smiled, satisfied. "Then it begins." She clicked a key. A series of encrypted files began uploading into a secure channel connected to a journalist. Victor felt the world shift in that moment. A point of no return. He realized that even if he regretted this one day, the decision was already irrevocable. Scarlett leaned back with triumph in her eyes. Emily will not see this coming. Victor looked toward the dark window where faint city lights glimmered. A heaviness settled in his chest. Because deep down, he knew Emily would see it coming. She always sensed storms long before they broke. The scheme had ignited. But Victor felt no thrill, only the slow, steady realization that a battle he was not sure he wanted had already begun. Emily Vance paced slowly across her office floor late in the evening. The city beyond the glass walls had gone quiet. Streetlights cast long reflections on the polished surface beneath her feet. Despite the calm outside, a storm brewed within. Her mind raced through every scenario, every possibility, every weakness that Victor and Scarlett might exploit. She had spent months preparing for challenges, but the certainty of betrayal always carried a weight that calculations and contingency plans could not entirely remove. She stopped at the window, hands resting lightly on the railing, and let herself breathe deeply. She thought of the journey that had brought her here, the heartbreak, the humiliation, the nights she had questioned her own worth. Each memory now formed a foundation beneath her feet. She was strong because she had survived. She was confident because she had learned. And yet even strength carried a shadow of doubt when those she once trusted returned to test it. A soft knock at the door drew her attention. Lena, her longtime friend and confidant, stepped inside. She held 2 mugs of tea and a slight smile that hinted at both warmth and amusement. Emily took one gratefully and followed her friend to a pair of chairs near the corner of the office. "You look like you are preparing for a siege," Lena said lightly. "Not that I mind a little drama, but I did not expect a full assault tonight." Emily smiled faintly. "In some ways, that is precisely what it feels like. But I refuse to let it shake me." Lena settled into her chair, glancing around the office. "You know, she said it is impossible not to admire the calm you keep, even when chaos is knocking at the door. Most people would be panicking. You are sipping tea and planning strategy like a general in a war room." Emily chuckled. "I have learned panic does not solve anything. It does not undo mistakes or prevent betrayal. It only clouds judgment." Lena raised an eyebrow. "And yet it is tempting sometimes. Admit it. You miss the adrenaline a little. The part where you discover that someone you trusted might be plotting against you behind your back. Admit it. You feel alive." Emily shook her head with a hint of irony. "You know me too well. I feel alive because I am standing here, because I am still in control, not because I am being tested. The thrill is secondary. Survival is primary." Lena nodded, smiling knowingly. "I suppose so, but be honest, Victor. Scarlett, this is about more than strategy. Is it not personal?" Emily hesitated, swirling her tea. "It is personal in the sense that betrayal always feels personal, but I cannot let emotions dictate my response. If I do, I risk the empire I built, and the people who trust me. I built this for more than revenge. I built it for women who have nowhere else to turn. I built it for me." Lena sipped her tea thoughtfully. "I see. Then, that's the strategy. I always like that about you. You are fierce, relentless, and yet you also care. That combination is rare." Emily set her cup down. She leaned back in her chair and allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. She thought of Victor, of how she had once believed in him, loved him, and trusted him completely. He had been a man shaped by fear and scarcity, as much a victim of his past as she had been of his betrayal. Yet he had chosen ambition over honesty and love. She had mourned him quietly and moved forward. And now the past had returned, rekindling that same tension in a new form. Lena studied her friend. "Do you want him to change?" she asked quietly. "Even a little. Even just enough to prove he can be better." Emily sighed. "I do not know. Part of me wants him to recognize the pain he caused and truly understand the consequences of his choices. Another part knows that even if he changes, the opportunity for hurt remains. Forgiveness does not erase risk, it merely tempers it." Lena tilted her head. "And Scarlett, what about her?" "She is relentless, cunning, and unbound by remorse. How do you handle someone like that without losing yourself?" Emily's eyes narrowed slightly with caution, precision, and a hint of patience. "Scarlett thrives on chaos, on pushing boundaries, on exploiting weaknesses. I must anticipate her moves without being baited into rash decisions. I must remain measured, calculated, unshakable." Marcus entered the office quietly, holding his tablet in his hand. Emily looked up, grateful for his presence. "Evening reports are in," he said. "There have been additional attempts to access our systems. All blocked but sophisticated. Someone is very familiar with internal protocols." He paused. "Scarlett is not alone. She has an insider, possibly someone we trust." Emily absorbed the information, feeling a surge of determination. "Thank you, Marcus. Prepare a comprehensive report for Sophia. I want complete legal and digital protection ready. No gaps." Marcus nodded. "Understood. But be careful. Victor is unpredictable. His loyalty to you is complicated by ambition. If Scarlett manipulates him, all bets are off." Emily exhaled slowly. "I am aware, but I also know Victor. His weaknesses are apparent to me, and I will use that knowledge responsibly. We act strategically, not emotionally. This is about protecting Ascent Ventures and the women who depend on it, not just about him or Scarlett." Lena smiled faintly. "You are terrifyingly composed. I admire that. And yet part of me worries that someone like you needs a release, some way to process the tension before it consumes you entirely." Emily allowed herself a small smile. "Perhaps, but for now, I channel it. Every challenge, every betrayal, every threat becomes part of the strategy. My mind is my weapon. My resolve is my shield. If I falter, it is not due to a lack of strength, but rather from a miscalculation. I will not miscalculate." She rose from her chair and walked to the window, looking down at the quiet city streets. The sun had fully risen now. Morning traffic began to stir. The world moved forward as always, indifferent to personal battles. That reality grounded her. It reminded her that success and survival demanded foresight, clarity, and unwavering confidence. Lena followed, leaning against the railing. "You are sure of your next move?" Emily nodded. "We monitor, we protect, we prepare. No leaks, no assumptions, no mistakes. Victor and Scarlett may think they know the battlefield, but I will always see one step further. I will anticipate, adapt, and respond." She turned from the window to face her friend, and in that gaze was a quiet warning. "This is my domain now. This is my story. They may try to manipulate, deceive, and destabilize, but I will not be shaken, not now, not ever." Marcus joined them, standing silently beside Emily. Together, they represented the force of foresight, strategy, and resilience. Together, they would face whatever scheme Victor and Scarlett had planned. And though the night had been long and filled with uncertainty, Emily felt the steady pulse of confidence returning. The storm would come, but she would not be caught unprepared. Emily exhaled deeply. "We move at dawn," she said. "And when they think they have the advantage, we will already be 10 steps ahead." Lena raised her mug in a silent toast. To foresight, to the strategy, and to survive the shadows of the past. Emily allowed herself a small, determined smile. "To survive the shadows of the past," she echoed. The office felt charged with quiet energy. Outside, the sun climbed higher, and the city awakened to a new day. Emily Vance, steadfast and unwavering, prepared herself for the confrontation ahead. Victor and Scarlett had lit the match, but she would control the fire. The inner confrontation had begun, and for the first time in months, she felt not fear but clarity, resolve, and a quiet anticipation of the coming battle. Emily Vance walked into the grand conference hall, filled with a buzzing crowd of entrepreneurs, investors, and activists from across the globe. The Empower Her Summit was in full swing, and the energy of the room hummed with anticipation. Women in the audience leaned forward as the next speaker was introduced. Emily's name was called, and applause filled the room. She stepped onto the stage with measured confidence, letting the moment settle around her before speaking. Her voice projected clearly and evenly. She began with stories of resilience, emphasizing the importance of transparency in leadership and the value of ethical foundations in business. She shared her journey openly, not hiding the betrayal she had endured or the lessons she had learned. There was a sincerity to her tone that resonated with the audience. She spoke about empowerment as a tool, not for revenge, but for building something lasting and just. She highlighted her initiatives at Ascent Ventures, focusing on support for women who had been systematically marginalized in the business world. As she spoke, a subtle tension remained at the edges of her mind. She knew Victor and Scarlett were active. She felt their presence in the shadows of her thoughts, a constant reminder that threats were never far behind. Yet she refused to show fear. Her composure remained intact, her words precise. Each point was layered with strategy. Each story reinforced her credibility and authority. After the keynote, Emily stepped off the stage and mingled with the attendees. She met Nadia, a young tech innovator whose company had developed advanced cybersecurity measures for intellectual property. Nadia explained her innovations in detail, and Emily's interest was immediately piqued. "You know," she said with a light smile, "this could protect not just our systems but our ideas from anyone attempting to manipulate them. Imagine it making people like Victor and Scarlett start from scratch every time they try." Nadia laughed softly. "That would be the idea." Emily's intuition told her that this alliance was important not just for protection, but also for signaling that Ascent Ventures was forward-thinking and resilient. She immediately discussed potential partnerships and investment. Each conversation furthered her network, while simultaneously strengthening her defenses. She was not merely reacting, she was proactively reclaiming the narrative. During a break, she spoke with several attendees and investors about her mission and the global impact of her programs. Her demeanor was warm but deliberate, every word carrying authority. A small irony escaped her lips as she joked with Julian Hayes, a visiting professor, about academic integrity and the concept of stealing ideas in research. The moment lightened the atmosphere and added a touch of humanity to the event without diluting her message. Backstage, she received updates from Marcus, who had been monitoring digital activity remotely. Marcus explained that one of Victor's former employees had shifted allegiance to Ascent Ventures, providing critical insights. That employee confirmed that Scarlett was planning to launch a rival company using stolen data from Ascent Ventures. Emily absorbed the information. She had anticipated such moves and had prepared contingencies. She turned to Sophia, who had accompanied her. "What are the legal implications if we can prove that the stolen data and attempted leaks occurred?" Sophia's expression remained calm. "Victor and Scarlett are vulnerable to multiple charges, including data theft, fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial misconduct. Federal jurisdiction is applicable, and the evidence you have now strengthens your position significantly. We can pursue protective injunctions to prevent further leaks and coordinate with law enforcement." Emily nodded. "Ensure all documentation is airtight. Prepare press statements in case we need to counteract public misinformation. No detail can be overlooked." Sophia confirmed that she had begun compiling the legal framework and would present the finalized plan later that day. Meanwhile, Emily's interactions at the conference expanded her alliances. Several of her contacts committed to providing cybersecurity support and mentorship to the women in her programs. Each conversation reinforced the network around her. She was creating a system of resilience and foresight. Every connection was a layer of protection against the schemes unfolding beyond the summit hall. In the afternoon session, she returned to the stage to moderate a panel on digital security and corporate ethics. She invited Nadia to present some of her technology to a broader audience. Together, they demonstrated practical applications for protecting intellectual property and company data. The panel was interactive, engaging, and at times humorous. Emily's voice and presence commanded attention. Even subtle ironies in dialogue with panelists conveyed confidence and strategic thinking. The audience responded enthusiastically, showing both appreciation and engagement. During a brief pause, she received a text from Marcus. "Victor Kane has been spotted near the Ascent Ventures network hub. He appears to be attempting a low-level probe. Nothing critical yet, but he is testing defenses." Emily read the message and exhaled slowly. He underestimated her preparedness. That would be his first mistake. She spoke briefly with Marcus and then returned to her panel. Calm and measured, she continued discussions about transparency and empowerment. She projected an image of control and authority while quietly coordinating responses to any attempted intrusion. Every movement was calculated. Every word was intentional. Emily had mastered the balance between public inspiration and private vigilance. After the panel concluded, she stepped off the stage and found Nadia waiting for her. The two women shared a quiet smile of mutual respect. "You are amazing, Emily," Nadia said. "The way you command authority while remaining approachable is impressive." Emily responded lightly. "It comes from surviving storms you did not choose, but learning to navigate them gracefully." Marcus approached with updates. The probe by Victor was unsuccessful. No systems were breached. Scarlett remains undetected. But her attempts are traceable. We can anticipate her next steps. Emily felt a surge of satisfaction. The counterattack was not a single action, but a networked strategy encompassing legal, technical, and social dimensions. She had anticipated, prepared, and executed simultaneously. The evening approached, and the final summit session was a networking gala. Emily mingled with her supporters and allies. Julian Hayes joined her, and they discussed plans for future collaborations and investments. Their conversation was lighthearted at times, but purposeful, integrating elements of mentorship, innovation, and resilience. Emily felt a sense of momentum building. Every alliance, every conversation, every decision strengthened her position and minimized vulnerability. She paused briefly by the window overlooking the city. The skyline glimmered under the fading sun. Her phone buzzed again. It was an alert from security. Victor Kane had been located near one of the company offices, but had retreated upon detection. Scarlett's location remained unknown. The threat was persistent but manageable. Emily allowed herself a small smile. Her defenses had held. Her network had responded. The counterattack had succeeded in halting their immediate plans. Emily turned back to the gala, adjusting her posture and composure. She would continue her engagement with the attendees, maintain the public narrative, and strengthen her alliances. Victor and Scarlett could attempt whatever schemes they wanted. They could believe themselves clever, relentless, and unpredictable. But Emily Vance had anticipated the patterns, prepared defenses, and mobilized a network strong enough to withstand deception. As the gala progressed, she found herself speaking to groups of women, sharing stories of empowerment and resilience. Each story reaffirmed her purpose and reminded her that the stakes were higher than personal vendetta. Every action she took was for a larger mission: to support those who had been silenced or marginalized, to build an empire of integrity, and to ensure that betrayal could never dismantle the foundation she had carefully constructed. She looked across the room and observed the energy, the engagement, the inspiration sparked by her presence and leadership. A sense of controlled anticipation settled over her. Victor and Scarlett were moving pieces on a board that she already understood. The counterattack was underway, not through brute force, but through strategy, foresight, and the power of alliances. Every step they took to destabilize her was met with preparation, adaptation, and a plan. Emily exhaled and allowed herself a moment of calm clarity. The past had tried to return. It had tested her limits and intentions. However, in the counterattack, she had found control, power, and a sense of justice that did not depend solely on revenge. She would remain vigilant, adaptive, and unstoppable. And when the final moves were made, Emily would ensure that the past no longer dictated the present or threatened the future. Victor Kane and Scarlett Reed met in a dimly lit loft on the outskirts of the city. The space was sparse but functional, with a few mismatched chairs, a long table covered in papers, and a single laptop glowing in the corner. The air smelled faintly of coffee and metal. Outside the city hummed with its usual evening energy, but inside the loft, a different kind of tension pulsed, one that carried equal parts excitement and unease. Victor paced slowly, hands in his pockets, mind racing through the strategy Scarlett had outlined. She moved with precision, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she executed commands with practiced expertise. Her focus was sharp, unyielding, and she thrived in the tension of high stakes. Victor watched her, simultaneously admiring and fearing the intensity she radiated. "We have a problem," she said without looking up. "Emily is stronger than we anticipated. Her cybersecurity is robust, and Marcus is vigilant. Every probe we attempt is detected and blocked." Victor stopped pacing and leaned over the table. "What do you propose?" Scarlett looked up, finally, her eyes cold and calculating. "We escalate. We use the stolen data, but we do not stop there. We need to create a secondary plan that leverages insider knowledge, someone who knows Ascent Ventures from within, someone who can navigate the systems without raising alarms." Victor exhaled. "That will not be easy. Trust is limited. The employees loyal to Emily are cautious and intelligent. One misstep and we are exposed." Scarlett smirked. "That is why I found a recruit," someone from Victor said. "You did what?" Scarlett leaned back confidently. "Do not underestimate what desperation and ambition can accomplish. This individual is skilled, ambitious, and willing to take risks. They have a personal stake in challenging Emily." Victor hesitated. He felt a mixture of excitement and unease. On one hand, the plan promised leverage and potential victory. On the other hand, he was aware of the risks. He knew Emily. He knew that underestimating her focus or resolve could undo everything. Scarlett clicked the laptop into a secure mode and opened a series of encrypted files. "Here," she said. "This is the plan. First, we leak the forged documents to a journalist friendly to high-profile corporate scandals. Second, we trigger a digital breach at Ascent Ventures to reinforce the narrative. Third, we activate our insider to subtly manipulate data and communications, thereby amplifying the perception of internal corruption. Fourth, we remain hidden until the final phase." Victor scrutinized the plan. He felt the weight of each step pressing down on him. The plan was elegant but ruthless, precise but morally ambiguous. Every action was designed to destabilize Emily, while simultaneously positioning them for personal gain. Scarlett observed his hesitation. "You hesitate, Victor. Why?" Victor met her gaze. "I know Emily better than you think. I know her instincts, her foresight, her ability to anticipate moves before they are made. She will detect patterns, even subtle ones. If we rely solely on aggression, we will expose ourselves to risk." Scarlett leaned forward. "That is why we need balance. Strategy plus instinct. You anticipate her reactions. I execute the technical elements. Together, we create a net she cannot see. She may anticipate, but she cannot control everything." Victor nodded slowly. "The plan is sound. However, I need to ensure that we have contingencies in place. Emily has resources, allies, and a network of protection. She will counteract. We must be prepared to adapt instantly." Scarlett smiled faintly. "That is the advantage we hold. We are agile. She is encumbered by visibility and public scrutiny. She cannot move without consequence. We can maneuver under the radar." Victor felt the familiar pull of ambition and adrenaline. For months he had been powerless, watching as Emily rose and thrived while he struggled. Now the chance to reclaim influence and control shimmered before him like a distant horizon. Yet beneath the desire for victory, a flicker of unease persisted. He remembered Emily as she had been, the quiet strength, the moral clarity, the resilience that had once inspired him. Scarlett tapped the keyboard again. "Tonight we act. The files go to the journalist. The breach begins. The insider is ready. Timing is crucial. We cannot hesitate. Every second counts." Victor exhaled, swallowing the tension rising in his chest. "Very well," he said. "We proceed. However, remember that I will not take steps that compromise my understanding of Emily entirely. She is dangerous in ways even you cannot predict." Scarlett arched an eyebrow. "Then we proceed with caution and precision. No errors, no hesitation. Every action is calculated. Every move is considered." Victor nodded and seated himself at a separate desk. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing against his chest. The choices they made tonight could either restore him to a sense of power or destroy what remained of his reputation. Every step required careful judgment. Every decision carried consequences beyond personal ambition. The night deepened. Outside the loft, the city lights flickered in rhythm with distant traffic. Inside, screens glowed with lines of code, financial spreadsheets, and plans for subtle manipulation. Scarlett executed sequences with exacting precision, while Victor monitored potential exposures and responses. Minutes stretched into hours. Each keystroke, each command, each decision felt charged with the gravity of their intent. Victor caught himself glancing at the files of Emily's internal communications. He felt a pang of recognition, a reminder of the woman he had once loved, respected, and perhaps still admired in a distant sense. Scarlett sensed his pause. "Do not falter," she said sharply. "Focus. The stakes are higher than personal sentiment. Success requires discipline." Victor exhaled slowly, clearing his mind. "Focus," he repeated quietly. "Success requires discipline." By midnight, preliminary results began to emerge. Initial probes triggered alerts, but none led to catastrophic exposure. The journalist had received the documents and was preparing a report. The insider had infiltrated the minimal network paths without detection. Every element proceeded with the precision Scarlett demanded. Victor felt a mix of triumph and anxiety. The thrill of control was exhilarating, but tempered by the constant awareness of Emily's potential response. He understood that even a slight miscalculation could unravel everything. Scarlett leaned back in her chair, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Tonight," she said quietly, "we ignite the first phase. Everything else flows from here." Victor nodded, muscles taut with anticipation. He felt the familiar mixture of fear and ambition. The night was theirs, but the battle was far from over. Emily Vance was formidable, relentless, and wise. Yet for now, the Shadow Alliance had struck first. Outside, the city slept unaware of the digital skirmishes unfolding behind the closed doors of a loft. Inside, Victor and Scarlett plotted, prepared, and maneuvered through a labyrinth of risk and opportunity. Every move they made was calculated. Every choice is deliberate. Every moment is edged with the tension of consequence. Victor looked across at Scarlett, whose face reflected triumph, tempered with the quiet hunger for more. He felt a reluctant respect for her capabilities and a reminder of his own vulnerabilities. The night stretched ahead, filled with possibility and peril. As they moved deeper into their strategy, both parties understood that the Shadow Alliance was only the beginning of a war where the past, present, and future were all intertwined. The first phase had begun, and the game had officially shifted. Emily Vance would soon feel the tremors. Victor and Scarlett had set the pieces in motion. The shadows were moving, and the stakes had never been higher. Victor Kane sat in a small, dimly lit office that felt smaller than it actually was. The hum of a single overhead fan filled the space with a monotonous rhythm. He stared blankly at the wall where a series of framed certificates hung, reminders of achievements he had earned, yet never truly valued until they no longer mattered. For months he had chased ambition, seeking validation through power and influence, and now the weight of his choices pressed down with a force he could not ignore. He thought about Scarlett. Her plan had been executed with precision, yet the thrill he had imagined never arrived. Instead of triumph, he felt a sense of unease. Every alert that came through his phone, every notification of Ascent Ventures system standing resilient, gnawed at the confidence he had once held. The insider they had recruited was valuable, yes, but even that had limits. Emily's defenses were layered, adaptive, and formidable. Victor sank into the chair, running a hand over his face. He remembered Dr. Harlan, his therapist, and the words spoken in a quiet office a week ago. "You carry ambition born of fear, Victor. A fear of being ordinary, a fear of scarcity. That fear will always make you vulnerable." He exhaled sharply. Dr. Harlan had been right. His childhood had been defined by lack, by moments of hunger and absence. Those experiences had shaped him into someone who sought control at any cost. Yet control had eluded him, especially now, when facing Emily Vance. He had underestimated her in the past, and he had underestimated her again. Across the city, Scarlett Reed had been arrested. Her capture was clean and precise, executed by federal authorities who had tracked the digital evidence she left behind. Victor had been left exposed, her confidant and co-conspirator in a plan that now unraveled. He had a sense of inevitability as he watched the news alert pop up on his phone. Scarlett has been apprehended at the downtown safe house, authorities confirm. Investigation ongoing. Victor felt a strange mixture of relief and despair. Relief that she could no longer manipulate events around him. Despair that the plan they had built together was collapsing entirely. He was now alone, left to face the consequences of decisions fueled by ambition and poor judgment. He reached for his phone and dialed Dr. Harlan. "Hello, Victor," said the therapist in a calm voice. "I need guidance," Victor admitted quietly. "I could control everything. I could rebuild my life and reclaim influence. But now it is all crumbling, and I do not know where to begin." Dr. Harlan replied slowly. "Begin by acknowledging the choices you made and the motivations behind them. Ambition born of fear can lead to destructive paths. Recognizing that is the first step in regaining control, not over others, but over yourself." Victor sat back, letting the words sink in. Recognition was painful but necessary. He had loved Emily at some point, honestly, and yet he had allowed desire for power to override respect and loyalty. Now the law, public scrutiny, and his own conscience were converging in a reckoning he could not avoid. Meanwhile, Emily Vance was taking measured steps to secure Ascent Ventures and her team. Marcus had coordinated with federal authorities to ensure that any remaining threats were neutralized. Evidence against Scarlett had been meticulously documented and was presented to the authorities with precision. Emily oversaw every aspect with a calm, strategic focus, ensuring that the systems, financial records, and employee protections remained intact and secure. Emily also extended support to employees who had been indirectly affected by the conspiracy. Funds from her personal reserves were used to stabilize projects and reassure her team. Transparency was her mantra. She held an all-hands meeting, presenting clear information and affirming that Ascent Ventures remained resilient. Employees responded with renewed trust and motivation. Victor received notifications from the court system and from Sophia Grant. Scarlett had confessed under interrogation and had implicated him as the primary conspirator. Legal exposure loomed large. Contracts, financial documents, and the digital footprint all pointed to his involvement. Emily's legal team had anticipated every move, leaving him minimal room for defense. He felt a sting of shame as he realized the gravity of his position. Not only had he attempted to destabilize Emily, but he had endangered himself and those who had once trusted him. Elaine, his mother, had expressed disappointment, and disappointment carried a weight heavier than public judgment. Victor contacted Dr. Harlan again. "What do I do now?" he asked. "How do I face the consequences?" Dr. Harlan's voice was steady. "You must accept responsibility. Attempting to evade it will only deepen the damage. Facing consequences is the first step toward redemption, however incomplete. Begin with honesty with yourself and others. Then focus on actions that can rebuild trust, even if only partially." Victor exhaled slowly. He knew the path forward would be difficult, and that public redemption might never fully be possible. Yet he recognized that acceptance and accountability were preferable to further deception. Meanwhile, Emily continued to advance her initiatives. She announced a series of programs aimed at digital security and ethical leadership, showcasing her commitment to transparency and resilience. The press covered her efforts extensively, highlighting the contrast between her proactive leadership and the collapse of the conspiracy against her. Every detail reinforced the message that integrity and preparation were more potent than deceit and ambition. Victor began to write a letter to Emily. He wrote with sincerity and humility, admitting his mistakes, acknowledging the consequences, and expressing a desire to make amends where possible. The act of writing became a cathartic release. For the first time in months, he confronted the reality of his actions without rationalization or deflection. As the legal proceedings advanced, Victor faced charges related to fraud, attempted digital intrusion, and conspiracy. Scarlett's testimony placed him as the primary orchestrator. The courts evaluated the evidence meticulously, and Victor received a sentence that reflected both the severity of his actions and the mitigating factors of his cooperation with authorities and acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Emily observed the proceedings with measured calm. Her focus remained on Ascent Ventures, her team, and the broader mission. The downfall of Victor and Scarlett was not a moment of triumph, but a confirmation of the resilience, planning, and ethical foundation she had built. The narrative had shifted. Threats from the past were neutralized. Justice was served through careful preparation rather than vengeance. Victor spent time reflecting on his choices, his childhood, and the fears that had driven him. He began engaging in charitable work, supporting women and young entrepreneurs, a symbolic and practical effort to redirect his energy toward constructive outcomes. The process was slow and deliberate, requiring patience and humility. Emily's empire continued to grow, strengthened by the lessons of the recent threats. She reinforced Ascent Ventures' security infrastructure, expanded the Empower Her network, and solidified alliances with other global leaders committed to integrity and empowerment. The experience demonstrated that preparation, strategic thinking, and ethical leadership could withstand even the most calculated threats. Victor realized that ambition without moral grounding leads to collapse. The lessons were painful but vital. Scarlett's capture, his own legal reckoning, and Emily's resilience provided clarity. The system he had sought to manipulate ultimately reflected his own failings. Emily stood at the balcony of her office one evening, looking out over the city. She reflected on the events of the past weeks. The storm had tested her at every turn. Victor and Scarlett had attempted to destabilize her empire, but preparation, strategic foresight, and a strong network had preserved both her company and her mission. She exhaled, feeling the weight of the threat lift from her. The system that had once been vulnerable was now fortified. Victor remained in a quieter, humbler position. He began rebuilding from a place of reflection and accountability. Scarlett was behind bars, the insider had been neutralized, and Emily's empire thrived. He recognized that power without ethics was fleeting, and that redemption required more than intention. The collapse of the system Victor had attempted to manipulate served as both a warning and a lesson. Emily's foresight had turned what could have been a disaster into a demonstration of resilience. Victor understood that the past could never be fully undone, but acknowledged that facing it with responsibility was the first step toward any meaningful future. Emily closed her eyes briefly on the balcony, absorbing the calm that now surrounded Ascent Ventures. She knew the future would continue to present challenges. Still, the lessons from this crisis reinforced her conviction in the importance of careful strategy, ethical leadership, and the value of allies. She had survived the shadow of the past, protected her team, and emerged stronger. The system had not collapsed for her, it had strengthened. Victor Kane faced the reality of consequences and the opportunity for limited redemption. Scarlett Reed's schemes were contained. Emily Vance looked toward the horizon of new initiatives, fortified in experience and resilience. The system collapse had proven that calculated preparation and ethical integrity were more potent than ambition fueled by fear. Victor Kane sat at a small wooden desk in his sparsely furnished apartment. The room smelled faintly of old paper and coffee, a combination that somehow evoked memories of his childhood days spent in libraries, seeking solace from a chaotic home life. He held a pen in his hand and stared down at a blank sheet of paper. Writing letters had never been his strong suit, yet he knew this one was necessary. It was not about legality or strategy. It was about facing the consequences of his actions and confronting the person he had once loved. He began slowly, struggling to find the right words. "I know what I did," Victor wrote, "and I accept the consequences. I allowed ambition and fear to dictate my actions, and in doing so, I betrayed your trust and everything we once shared. My choices were reckless and selfish, and for that I am genuinely sorry." Victor paused, the pen hovering above the paper. Writing these words stirred a mix of emotions he had long suppressed. Shame, regret, and a deep yearning for understanding clashed with the remnants of pride and stubbornness. But beneath it all was a desire to do something right, however small, to acknowledge the wrongs and begin making amends in some meaningful way. He continued writing, detailing his plan to dedicate time and resources to charitable efforts supporting women and young entrepreneurs. It was not a grand gesture meant to erase his past misdeeds, but a tangible effort to contribute positively to the world. He explained how he intended to work quietly, without seeking recognition, learning from the mistakes that had led him to this point. Victor folded the letter and placed it in an envelope addressed to Emily Vance. It was a symbolic act, a recognition that the past could not be changed, but that deliberate and conscientious choices could influence the future. Meanwhile, Emily was immersed in the operations of Ascent Ventures. The company had stabilized and grown stronger following the recent threats. The capture of Scarlett Reed and the exposure of the insider had reinforced the resilience of their systems and the integrity of the team. Emily continued to expand the Empower Her initiatives, connecting with women globally and sharing her experiences to inspire and educate. Marcus approached her with the latest security brief. All systems remained secure, with no signs of new threats. The insider had been fully debriefed and had previously provided information on potential vulnerabilities, which had now been addressed. Emily absorbed the information, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. The immediate danger had passed, but she remained vigilant. Experience had taught her that complacency was a dangerous trait. During a brief break, Emily checked her mail and found a letter from Victor. She hesitated, recognizing the name on the envelope. Carefully, she opened it and read the contents. His words were sincere, reflective, and deeply personal. They revealed a man who had confronted his past actions, acknowledged his mistakes, and expressed a desire to contribute positively despite his failures. Emily leaned back in her chair, absorbing the weight of the letter. There was no impulse for revenge, no lingering anger directed toward him. Instead, there was an opportunity to witness genuine recognition of wrongdoing and the beginning of a transformation, however fragile. She reflected on the past, the pain, the betrayal, and the lessons learned. Victor's letter represented a rare moment of accountability in a story otherwise dominated by deceit and ambition. She called Marcus over. "Keep this confidential for now," she said. "I want to consider the implications carefully before making any decisions regarding a response." He nodded, understanding the delicate nature of the situation. Victor began implementing his plan for redemption quietly. He reached out to organizations focused on supporting women in business, volunteering his time and offering guidance drawn from his own experiences. He spoke with young entrepreneurs, sharing both successes and failures to provide insight and mentorship. Each action was deliberate, small, and humble. He was not seeking recognition, but rather personal accountability and a sense of purpose that had eluded him for years. At the same time, Emily advanced her global initiatives, meeting virtually and in person with leaders, activists, and young women eager to learn and gain support. Her leadership style combined strategic thinking, ethical grounding, and genuine empathy. She inspired confidence and trust through her competence and authenticity, rather than relying on authority or intimidation. Victor observed the outcomes of his new approach from a distance. There was no immediate redemption in the eyes of the public, no sudden absolution for past mistakes, but he found a growing sense of internal peace. Every interaction where he offered guidance, support, or mentorship reinforced his understanding of accountability and the importance of action over words. Emily reflected on the situation quietly during a team meeting. While she could not erase the past, she recognized the significance of Victor's acknowledgement and his efforts to make amends. She understood that forgiveness was not about condoning past actions, but about choosing a path forward that prioritized growth, understanding, and strategic thinking. Over the following weeks, Victor continued his efforts. He organized workshops for aspiring female entrepreneurs, providing them with both financial literacy and business strategy insights. He collaborated with nonprofits to create programs focused on digital security for small startups vulnerable to exploitation. Each step reinforced the principle that personal transformation required consistent and deliberate effort. Emily maintained her focus on Ascent Ventures, integrating lessons from the recent crisis into future planning. Systems were strengthened, mentorship programs expanded, and support networks solidified. She saw the broader picture, understanding that resilience was not just about technical safeguards, but also about community, collaboration, and ethical leadership. Victor reached a point where he could reflect on his journey objectively. He had confronted the consequences of his choices, contributed positively to the lives of others, and begun cultivating humility and awareness. While the past could never be changed, he could influence his future and perhaps indirectly support Emily's mission without intrusion or interference. Emily responded to his letter carefully, acknowledging his words without implying reconciliation or re-establishment of trust in a personal context. Her response was professional, yet measured, recognizing the effort he had made while maintaining boundaries and prioritizing the safety and integrity of her company and team. Victor received her response and took it as a signal to continue his path quietly. He understood that redemption was not immediate or guaranteed, but rather an ongoing process that required consistency, patience, and reflection. Each act of service, each piece of guidance, each step toward accountability reinforced a shift in character. Emily observed the progress and noted the significance of accountability and transformation in action. The situation provided a framework for her to emphasize mentorship and resilience in her programs, highlighting the potential for individuals to learn from mistakes and redirect energy toward constructive endeavors. As months passed, both Victor and Emily operated in their respective spheres with a renewed understanding of the consequences of ambition, betrayal, and accountability. Victor's personal transformation was subtle yet profound, grounded in the recognition that power without ethical consideration leads to collapse. Emily's continued success reinforced the importance of foresight, strategic planning, and moral leadership in sustaining growth and influence. In quiet moments, Victor reflected on the irony of the situation. The same ambition that had driven him to betrayal had now become a catalyst for personal development. The process was neither easy nor immediate, but it was authentic and transformative. Each day represented a choice to act responsibly, thoughtfully, and with integrity. Emily continued her work with unwavering focus. She expanded programs, strengthened networks, and fostered an environment where resilience, foresight, and empowerment were central to her approach. The lessons from the past reinforced the principles guiding her actions and strategies. Victor understood that his redemption was not about external validation, but about living with integrity and contributing meaningfully. Emily recognized that accountability, ethical action, and resilience were vital components of leadership. Both had evolved through confrontation with the past, revealing the potential for transformation, growth, and unexpected reconciliation. The unexpected redemption was subtle and ongoing. It was not a grand gesture or a public spectacle, but a quiet evolution of understanding, action, and responsibility. It demonstrated that even those who had strayed could find a path toward positive influence if they confronted their choices with honesty, humility, and deliberate intention. Victor Kane began to rebuild his life with cautious optimism, guided by the lessons he had learned and a desire to make a positive contribution. Emily Vance continued to expand her empire with clarity, strength, and ethical vision. The story of betrayal had shifted to one of accountability and measured redemption, demonstrating that even in the wake of ambition gone astray, genuine change and progress were possible. Emily Vance adjusted the cuff of her sleeve as she stepped into the grand hall of the Victoria Vance Gala. The space was illuminated by soft golden lighting that reflected off crystal chandeliers, creating a warm yet commanding atmosphere. Hundreds of guests mingled, glasses of champagne in hand, as conversations weaved through the room in a hum of excitement. Tonight was more than a gala. It was the formal announcement of the $50 million Empower Her Fund, named after her grandmother, a tribute to the legacy of strength and empowerment that had shaped Emily's vision from the very beginning. She paused briefly at the entrance, taking in the scene. The tables were meticulously arranged, complete with polished silverware and floral centerpieces in bold yet elegant colors. Displays the highlighted achievements of women supported by the fund from around the world. Photographs and video screens documented stories of resilience, innovation, and leadership. The gala was not merely a celebration, but a demonstration of purpose and mission brought to life through meticulous planning and strategic vision. Julian Hayes approached with a welcoming smile. "You are radiant, Emily," he said softly. "The work you have done to bring this together is remarkable." Emily returned a small smile. "Thank you, Julian. It is a culmination of many months of planning and the dedication of countless people. I could not have done it alone." As they walked toward the main stage, Emily's mind briefly flickered to the events of the past months. The betrayal, threats, and challenges had left marks, both visible and invisible. Yet the evening was a testament to resilience, foresight, and ethical leadership. She had turned the crises into an opportunity to showcase strength and vision. On stage, she addressed the audience with calm authority. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "it is an honor to present the Victoria Vance Empower Her Fund. This initiative is not just about financial support. It is about mentorship, strategic guidance, and creating a network where women can thrive without fear of marginalization. It is about learning from past challenges and using them to build a future of opportunity and resilience." The audience listened intently as Emily spoke, absorbing the stories of women who had overcome systemic barriers and challenges. Each anecdote illustrated not only individual strength, but also the impact of community, support, and ethical guidance. The fund would provide resources to support entrepreneurs' education and digital security initiatives, ensuring that the next generation of women leaders had a foundation stronger than the obstacles they faced. After the speech, Emily stepped down from the stage and moved through the crowd, greeting supporters and allies. Marcus provided updates discreetly. Security systems remained intact, no immediate threats were detected, and media coverage was favorable, reinforcing the gala's message of empowerment and strategic foresight. Emily navigated the room with confidence, striking a balance between her personal interactions and the broader messaging of the event. Julian joined her again near one of the displays. They exchanged light conversation about the photographs and the stories of the women featured in them. He made a subtle joke about academic competition and the concept of stealing ideas in research, causing Emily to laugh gently. The moment was brief but meaningful, offering a touch of levity amidst the evening's gravity. As the gala progressed, Victor Kane entered discreetly. He had attended under the radar, aware of the potential scrutiny but driven by a need to acknowledge his previous actions. Emily noticed him at first glance, a flicker of recognition and a mixture of caution running across her expression. She allowed herself a measured pause before continuing her interactions. Victor's presence was acknowledged without immediate confrontation. His appearance was a poignant reminder of the past and the journey they had both traversed. Victor approached her cautiously. "Emily," he said quietly, "I wanted to ensure that your efforts are recognized and that you understand my continued commitment to accountability and contribution. I will not interfere with your work, nor undermine the mission you lead." Emily regarded him thoughtfully. "Your actions and the steps you have taken are acknowledged, Victor," she said evenly. "Let us maintain our focus on the purpose of tonight, empowering others and the legacy we choose to uphold." The evening continued with a series of presentations, acknowledgements, and networking opportunities. Each speaker reinforced the themes of empowerment, resilience, and strategic foresight. Guests shared their experiences and expressed their commitment to support the mission. Emily maintained an authoritative yet approachable presence, striking a balance between professional obligations and genuine engagement. Victor observed from a distance, noting the scale of influence and positive impact Emily had cultivated. He reflected on his own journey, recognizing the contrast between destructive ambition and constructive action. Each interaction, each story, each success reinforced the importance of ethical leadership and long-term vision over impulsive desire for power. During a private moment, Emily spoke with Nadia, the young tech innovator whose cybersecurity solutions had been instrumental in protecting the fund and the company. Together, they discussed the next phase of initiatives, expanding the reach of the Empower Her Fund globally, incorporating mentorship programs, and further technological safeguards. Nadia expressed excitement about the collaboration and the tangible impact on the lives of women globally. Marcus approached with the final security report. Everything remained secure, no irregularities were detected, and media coverage was intense and favorable. Emily nodded in approval. Every precaution we have taken has ensured that the focus remains on the mission and the people we aim to empower. As the night drew to a close, Emily stepped onto the balcony overlooking the city. Lights glittered below, and the hum of traffic provided a steady rhythm in contrast to the elevated energy within the hall. Julian joined her quietly. "You have created something remarkable," he said. "The impact is clear, and the vision is undeniable." Emily took a deep breath, feeling the weight and the relief of the evening. This was not just a gala, it was a statement of purpose, a reflection of resilience and strategic planning. It was the culmination of navigating betrayal, overcoming threats, and reinforcing systems with foresight and ethical grounding. Victor remained in the background, observing silently. His presence was acknowledged, but boundaries were maintained. He had witnessed the full extent of Emily's achievements and the deliberate steps taken to safeguard her mission. The juxtaposition of past ambition and current accomplishment provided a quiet lesson in accountability and transformation. The gala concluded with applause, photography, and formal recognition. Guests departed carrying with them the stories, the energy, and the commitment to further the mission of the Empower Her Fund. Emily remained briefly on the balcony, reflecting on the journey from vulnerability to empowerment. Every challenge, every threat, every difficult decision had reinforced the importance of ethical leadership, preparation, and strategic resilience. Victor, in a final gesture, approached Emily privately. "I wish you continued success," he said quietly. "The work you are doing is meaningful and necessary." Emily nodded without response, maintaining professional composure. Actions spoke louder than words, and the evening had already illustrated that. Emily returned inside to conclude the formal proceedings. The gala had achieved its goals. Legacy, empowerment, and strategic vision had been communicated and celebrated. The network of supporters, allies, and partners was strengthened. Systems had been reinforced, and the message of resilience and foresight had been broadcast clearly. As the hall emptied, Emily took a final glance around. Every detail reflected purpose, preparation, and the culmination of careful planning. From the threats of the past to the triumphs of the present, the evening symbolized a moment where vision, ethics, and strategy converged. She stepped outside into the cool night air, looking at the cityscape below. Lights twinkled in a steady rhythm, the city unaware of the battles, strategies, and transformations that had led to this night. Emily exhaled slowly, feeling a sense of clarity and accomplishment. The legacy of Victoria Vance was alive and thriving through the Empower Her Fund and the initiatives it would support. Tonight was not an end, but a milestone. It was proof that challenges could be transformed into opportunities, threats into lessons, and ambition into purpose. Emily Vance had navigated betrayal, rebuilt trust, and established a foundation that would endure. The gala was a celebration of what had been achieved and a declaration of what was yet to come. Victor Kane would continue his path of redemption quietly and deliberately. Emily Vance would continue to lead with integrity, foresight, and strength. The Legacy Summit had reinforced that ethical leadership, strategic thinking, and empowerment were forces capable of shaping the future in profound and lasting ways. The night closed with the understanding that a true legacy is built not solely on wealth or influence, but on the capacity to transform challenges into enduring impact. The Victoria Vance Gala continued late into the evening, with guests mingling and networking under the warm glow of chandeliers. Conversations floated across the room like threads in a tapestry, each one weaving connections, opportunities, and shared enthusiasm for the Empower Her initiatives. Emily Vance moved gracefully through the crowd, exchanging firm handshakes, warm smiles, and brief words of encouragement. Her presence commanded attention, not through force, but through quiet confidence born of experience, preparation, and vision. Julian Hayes followed closely, discussing details of the latest Empower Her mentorship programs. They laughed lightly at his playful critique of overly complicated academic presentations. It was a slight reprieve amidst the weight of the evening, a moment that reminded Emily that even in spaces of power and influence, there was room for human connection and levity. Marcus intercepted Emily with a discreet nod. "Everything remains secure," he reported. "There are no anomalies in the system, and the team is maintaining vigilance. The gala proceeds without disruption." Emily exhaled and gave a subtle nod of approval. Her attention returned to the guests while her mind quietly monitored the behind-the-scenes operations, a balance she had mastered after months of navigating crises. As she moved toward the main stage to acknowledge a group of young entrepreneurs, Emily sensed a familiar presence in the crowd. Victor Kane had entered quietly, avoiding unnecessary attention, yet his posture and expression betrayed the purpose of his visit. He approached cautiously, aware of boundaries and the delicate history between them. Emily acknowledged him with a composed nod. She did not speak immediately, allowing the moment to settle. Victor spoke softly. "I wanted to ensure you were aware that my efforts to contribute positively have continued. I am not here to disrupt or interfere, but to witness the outcome of your work firsthand." Emily considered his words carefully. "Your presence is noted, Victor," she replied evenly. "I trust that you understand the importance of boundaries tonight and the focus of this event on empowerment and legacy." Victor nodded, demonstrating respect and restraint. The recognition of accountability in his demeanor was clear, though unspoken, signaling that the transformation he had begun in private was ongoing. Emily returned to the stage for the next segment, introducing a panel featuring successful women from various industries. The discussion focused on leadership resilience and strategies for overcoming systemic challenges. Emily facilitated the conversation with skill, ensuring each panelist's voice was heard, while drawing connections to the broader Empower Her mission. The audience responded with enthusiasm, asking insightful questions and sharing experiences. Emily's ability to guide the dialogue, integrate lessons from her personal journey, and provide practical insights showcased her authority and strategic vision. The panel reinforced the theme of resilience as a tangible, actionable principle. During a brief intermission, Emily and Julian returned to one of the lounge areas where supporters had gathered. They discussed upcoming initiatives, potential partnerships, and ways to expand the global reach of the Empower Her Fund. Julian's observations were thoughtful, his input respectful yet challenging, prompting Emily to consider new angles and innovative approaches to mentorship and funding. Marcus approached with an urgent whisper. "Security has detected an anomaly in the guest list," he said quietly. "A visitor has been flagged attempting to gain access without proper credentials." Emily's attention sharpened immediately. She adjusted her posture, signaling focus and authority. "What steps are in place to handle this?" she asked calmly. Marcus outlined the protocol in detail, explaining how the team had already engaged the intruder without alerting other guests. Emily listened carefully, then nodded. "Ensure that all actions are discreet and contained." The situation was handled efficiently. The intruder was escorted from the premises without incident, and the gala continued seamlessly. Emily's composure remained intact, projecting confidence while subtly reinforcing the strength of her leadership and the security of her enterprise. The minor incident highlighted the importance of maintaining integrity in high-stakes environments. Victor observed from a distance, impressed by the efficiency and poise with which Emily handled the situation. He reflected on the contrast between past attempts to destabilize her and the evident strength and preparedness she now exhibited. The realization deepened his understanding of the consequences of underestimating her resolve and foresight. As the gala progressed, Emily introduced a moment of recognition, highlighting key contributors to the Empower Her Fund. Each acknowledgement was accompanied by a brief story illustrating the impact of their efforts. The audience responded with applause and admiration, reinforcing a sense of collective achievement and shared purpose. In a quiet moment, Julian and Emily discussed strategies for the next phase of expansion. She discussed potential international partnerships, technology integration, and plans to enhance mentorship networks. Julian offered insights on academic collaboration and research initiatives that could complement Empower Her programs. Their discussion was lighthearted at times, but deeply strategic, combining humor with actionable planning. The evening reached its pinnacle with the announcement of new global initiatives aimed at expanding access to mentorship and funding for women in underserved regions. Emily presented the plans with clarity, outlining the vision, objectives, and anticipated impact. The audience responded enthusiastically, expressing commitment and support for these initiatives. Victor approached Emily one final time as the event neared its conclusion. "I wanted to ensure you were aware that your work is inspiring and meaningful," he said quietly. "I am here to observe and learn from the example you set." Emily acknowledged him with a measured nod. "The night is not about you or me. It is about the people we aim to empower and the legacy we choose to leave. Keep that in mind." Victor nodded, understanding the significance of her words. His own presence, while quiet and controlled, was a testament to the lessons learned and the ongoing path of accountability he had undertaken. Emily returned to the main stage to deliver closing remarks. She spoke about the importance of resilience, foresight, and ethical leadership. Her voice resonated with authority and empathy, leaving the audience inspired and motivated. She emphasized that true empowerment required intentional action, community support, and the courage to confront challenges with integrity. As the gala drew to a close, Emily moved among the departing guests, offering personal thanks, acknowledging contributions, and encouraging continued engagement with the Empower Her initiatives. Each interaction reinforced relationships, built networks, and strengthened the foundation of support around her mission. Victor watched from the edge of the room, reflecting on the evolution of events. The journey from betrayal and ambition to accountability and constructive action had been difficult but instructive. Observing Emily's leadership, resilience, and the tangible impact of her initiatives reinforced the lessons of responsibility, humility, and foresight. The final moments of the gala were marked by applause, photography, and formal recognition. Emily stood quietly, taking in the culmination of months of planning, strategy, and effort. The room reflected not just celebration, but purpose, vision, and the tangible impact of leadership grounded in ethics and preparation. Emily stepped onto the balcony overlooking the city. Lights glittered below, and the night air carried a sense of calm and clarity. Julian joined her silently, sharing the quiet satisfaction of accomplishment. Together, they observed the skyline, recognizing that the gala represented not only a celebration, but a milestone in a broader mission of empowerment and resilience. Victor remained in the background, observing respectfully. His presence was non-intrusive but meaningful. It represented acknowledgement, reflection, and the ongoing path of personal accountability. The contrast between past schemes and the present demonstrated the enduring power of preparation, strategy, and ethical leadership. Emily allowed herself a moment of reflection. Every challenge, betrayal, and decision had led to this night. The gala had reinforced the principles of resilience, strategic foresight, and ethical guidance. The Empower Her initiatives would continue to grow, strengthened by the lessons of the past and guided by a vision for the future. Victor took one last glance at Emily before departing. The recognition of her achievements and the awareness of his own responsibilities created a quiet resolution within him. The night had demonstrated the power of transformation, accountability, and deliberate action. Emily exhaled as the gala concluded, feeling the culmination of effort, strategy, and purpose. The Empower Her legacy was secured, not through force or intimidation, but through vision, resilience, and ethical leadership. The gala revelation had not only celebrated achievements, but had reinforced the principles that would guide the mission into the future. The evening closed with clarity, focus, and the understanding that empowerment was both a responsibility and a legacy worth cultivating. Emily Vance stepped out of the gala venue into the crisp night air. The city stretched before her a sea of lights and movement, yet below the glittering exterior, there was a sense of calm impossibility. Tonight marked a milestone, the formal launch of the Victoria Vance Empower Her Fund, and the culmination of months of preparation, strategic planning, and careful navigation through challenges. Yet Emily knew that every ending was also a beginning, and that the work of empowerment, resilience, and leadership was ongoing. Julian Hayes walked beside her. The gala had been extraordinary, he said quietly. The energy in the room was palpable, and the impact is already being felt. Emily nodded. It is not just about the event, Julian. It is about creating structures and systems that endure beyond a single night. The fund, the mentorship programs, and the technological safeguards all serve a purpose greater than celebration. They are investments in a future where women have access to resources, knowledge, and support to thrive. They paused on the balcony overlooking the city. Emily inhaled deeply, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and anticipation. The past months had been a journey through betrayal, challenges, and unexpected threats. Victor Kane and Scarlett Reed had attempted to destabilize her empire, yet she had emerged not only intact but stronger than ever. The experience had reinforced lessons about vigilance, strategic foresight, and the importance of ethical leadership. Julian smiled and gestured toward the horizon. "It is a new chapter," he said. "Opportunities and challenges will continue to arise, but you have demonstrated the ability to navigate them with clarity and purpose." Emily looked thoughtful. She knew the statement was true. She had faced crises that tested her resolve and intelligence, and had come through them with lessons that would inform every decision moving forward. Meanwhile, Victor Kane reflected on his own path. He had faced consequences for past misdeeds and had begun a journey of accountability and constructive action. Scarlett Reed was contained, and his own efforts focused on charitable work, mentoring, and quiet contributions toward causes he now recognized as meaningful. He understood that redemption was not guaranteed. Public approval was not immediate, but the internal shift toward responsibility and ethical engagement was vital. Emily returned inside to check on the final details of the evening. Staff and volunteers were concluding their responsibilities, and guests were departing with a sense of purpose and commitment. Marcus provided a final security update, confirming that all systems were intact and that the gala had proceeded without incident. Emily allowed herself a moment of relief. The meticulous planning, focus on risk mitigation, and proactive measures ensured that the event was both successful and secure. In the private lounge, she met with Nadia and a few other key collaborators. Discussions centered on the next phase of global initiatives, including the integration of technology, expansion of mentorship, and outreach to underserved regions. Each participant brought ideas, energy, and expertise to the table, creating a sense of momentum that extended beyond the gala. Emily facilitated the conversation with authority and empathy, ensuring that every voice was heard and every plan aligned with the broader mission. Victor observed the developments from a distance, understanding that his role was now one of witness and reflection. He had seen the full scope of Emily's leadership and the tangible impact of her vision. The contrast between past ambition fueled by fear and current accomplishments rooted in strategy and ethics was stark. He recognized that personal growth required not only acknowledgement of mistakes, but also consistent, constructive action, and that true empowerment came from supporting others without ego or interference. As the evening drew to a close, Emily took a final moment to reflect. The gala was not merely a celebration, but a testament to resilience, preparation, and ethical leadership. It represented the culmination of a journey through challenges and threats, a demonstration of strategic foresight, and a commitment to empowering others. The work was far from complete, but the foundations were secure and the trajectory clear. Victor wrote in his journal that night. He reflected on the lessons learned, emphasizing the importance of accountability and the power of constructive action. He documented steps taken, progress made, and areas for continued growth. The process was both cathartic and instructive, reinforcing his understanding that personal transformation required ongoing attention, humility, and deliberate effort. Emily prepared for the next phase of initiatives. She reviewed strategic plans, assessed potential risks, and engaged with global partners. Her focus remained on expanding the Empower Her Fund, integrating technological solutions for security and mentorship, and creating sustainable systems that would benefit women globally. Each decision was informed by lessons learned from past threats and crises, ensuring the enterprise remained resilient and adaptable. Julian joined her for a brief discussion about educational programs and partnerships. They explored opportunities for collaborative research initiatives, mentorship exchanges, and global networking events. Humor and lighthearted moments interspersed the conversation, balancing the intensity of strategic planning with human connection and engagement. Victor Kane continued his path quietly. He engaged in volunteer work, mentorship programs, and discreet contributions to organizations supporting women and young entrepreneurs. Each act reinforced his understanding of ethical responsibility and personal accountability. He did not seek recognition, but focused on tangible impact and sustained commitment. Emily observed from a leadership perspective that the experiences of the past months had strengthened her approach. Systems were fortified, networks were engaged, and initiatives were strategically aligned with long-term goals. She recognized the importance of vigilance, foresight, and ethical grounding in sustaining growth and impact. The night concluded with Emily standing on the balcony once more, absorbing the city lights. She reflected on the past, the challenges she had faced, and the lessons she had learned. The journey through betrayal, threat, and personal and professional trials had reinforced the principles of resilience, ethical leadership, and strategic planning. She exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility tempered by the clarity of purpose. Victor reflected privately on his own journey, noting the significance of observation, accountability, and constructive engagement. He understood that influence without ethics was fleeting, and that redemption required sustained, deliberate effort. The lessons of the past would inform his actions moving forward, ensuring that ambition was tempered by responsibility and foresight. Emily looked at Julian, then at Marcus, and finally at Nadia and the team that surrounded her. Together, they represented the collective strength, resilience, and strategic vision necessary to maintain and expand the mission. Each contribution, each decision, each act of preparation reinforced the foundation for future success and empowerment. Victor remained outside the immediate sphere of influence, acknowledging boundaries and focusing on personal growth and constructive contribution. He understood the limits of his influence and the importance of ethical restraint. The contrast between his path and Emily's continued trajectory provided clarity and perspective on the nature of power, accountability, and redemption. Emily exhaled deeply, taking in the cool night air. The city below reflected lights and movement, yet beneath the surface, there was a sense of possibility and continuity. The gala had marked a milestone, but the journey continued. Empower Her initiatives would expand, influence would grow, and the mission of empowerment and strategic foresight would persist. Victor Kane understood that the path forward required patience, humility, and constructive engagement. Emily Vance had demonstrated that resilience, strategy, and ethical leadership could transform challenges into opportunities. Both were on paths defined by learning, accountability, and deliberate action. As the first light of dawn approached, Emily looked toward the horizon. She understood that the journey of leadership, empowerment, and legacy was an ongoing process. Past challenges had been met with resilience, threats neutralized through preparation, and growth fostered through strategic foresight. The future remained uncertain, yet filled with opportunity. Victor Kane would continue his work quietly and deliberately, learning from the past and engaging constructively. Emily Vance would continue to lead with vision, integrity, and strength. The Empower Her legacy was secure and growing, a testament to preparation, ethical leadership, and empowerment. The city slept, yet the possibilities of tomorrow were already in motion. Emily reflected on the lessons of the past months and embraced the challenges ahead with clarity, focus, and determination. The new journey had begun, defined not by the shadows of the past, but by the strength of vision, the resilience of purpose, and the empowerment of others. The night closed with a sense of calm, anticipation, and readiness. Emily Vance had survived threats, navigated betrayal, and emerged with a fortified mission. Victor Kane had confronted consequences and begun a path of redemption. Both were moving forward on paths shaped by reflection, accountability, and deliberate action. The new journey was underway, a continuation of legacy, vision, and the enduring power of resilience.